Hello and welcome to Friday Double Bill, the show where we review and analyze the latest films from Bollywood and Hollywood to help you make a more informed choice at the movies. Today we've got a whopper of a show, and to tell you more about it, here's Mayank Fahad.
Well, it's a huge weekend at the theatres as it turns out, and we've tinkered with the format of the show just a little bit. Between us, me and Fahad, we watched 5 movies this weekend, but then 3 have been done by me, 2 have been done by him, which means we're looking at Friday Double Bill, of course, but we're also looking at triple quick takes. Well, so far as the big reviews are concerned, we're coming up right away with the review and a discussion on Action Jackson. That's the big Bollywood release, and from Hollywood, there's Ridley Scott's Exodus, Gods and Kings. Action Jackson, or AJ, is a film directed by Prabhu Deva. It is about a young man played by Ajay Devgn who, without much reason or warning, starts getting attacked by various goons in his city. Clearly, there is a mystery behind this occurrence. Revealing anything beyond this would be giving the movie away. But here's what we can tell you. There's Ajay Devgn in possibly every scene in this film. Women love him. Even the villain loves him. He can kick ass. He can wield the sword. But for what? As in, what is the story of this film? That doesn't matter.
You know, Mayank, every once in a while there comes along a movie of such epic proportion where everybody is humbled and silenced and stunned. This was one such film. It began with Sonakshi Sinha, how do I put this delicately, being constantly exposed to Ajay Devgn's nether regions. She is so overwhelmed by what is on display that she feels that this brings her good luck. So she has made it now her mission to constantly get a glimpse of his dangling dong. And the film unfolds on that level and that premise, and then it's just downhill from there all the way, is it not?
You know, I'll be very, very honest with you, Fahad. I was extremely late for the show. I was stuck in a traffic jam. Bombay, you know, you can be in a traffic jam for about 2 hours. That's roughly what was going on with me. I didn't anticipate it, which is already a physical assault on your senses. Then I land up in the theater, and then I come across what is supposed to be escapist entertainment, but that is such a, you know, assault on my mental senses that I really lost it. I thought I was better off being in that jam. To cut a very long story short, Fahad, there are certain films that should not be dignified with review, and it happens once every few weeks. This is one of those films, and you know, I'll withhold my review only for the fact that this is not a film.
Correct. Now you're talking about escapist entertainment. This was a bunch of critics being held captive in a cinema hall, wanting to escape, but unfortunately they didn't have that prerogative. This is singularly the worst film I have ever seen in my life, which is saying a lot given the kind of crap we've been subjected to on a, you know, weekly sustained basis. You've got Sonakshi Sinha and her thunder thighs, God bless them. You've got Yami Gautam serenading Ajay Devgn. You've got Manasvi Mamagai, who has embraced this role with a passion. And you know, is a vamp of really some amazing consequence, obsessed with Ajay Devgn, and would, you know, kill, maim, murder, loot, pillage, do all that she has to do. It's probably the worst experience one has ever had to sit through. And I agree with you, this is not even a film that we can review. All we can do is commiserate with each other. We've just come from this film, by the way, so we're still reeling in shock.
We're just getting to the details, and I think calling something the worst, that means the first from below, is high praise to begin with. Let's get into details. Let's get on to the oh my god or the OMG moments from this film.
Given that this film is probably the worst film one has ever had the misfortune of watching, it's just a series of nuggets of oh my god moments. Kunal Roy Kapoor has hammed so outrageously in this film. You know, it's hard to believe that anybody could be this third rate in a film in terms of acting, over the top performances. Everything is so slapstick or crude. This obsession with the male member, you know, with women, the reactionary, sexist, misogynistic movie. borrowing heavily and unapologetically from Kill Bill, from Sin City, just lifted violently all kinds of things and still makes such a huge mess of things.
Well, you know, I was looking for an oh my god moment to come from you, and I realized that you've already given your oh my god moment, which was from the first half of the film where you mentioned Sonakshi Sinha's character. I think there is a curious piece of writing going on here, so far as the female characters are concerned.
There's
My
a curious piece of writhing, because this is a Prabhu Deva film. Everybody is writhing, they are cavorting, they are doing all kinds of calisthenics. This is what passes as Prabhu Deva's dancing. God bless him, he's a genius. But when every single person in the film is, you know, dancing like him, and they certainly can't measure up, it is pathetic. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm still on the writing part, and I think the fact that right after the first half of the film comes our villain, or actually the villain's sister, who I thought was, you know, I think it needs to come from some really, you know, higher source of imagination to come up with a character who looks at Ajay Devgn and thereafter, you know, is obsessed with him. The first time that she meets him, after having taken a shower thinking about him and smoked a few cigarettes thinking about him, she says, "Tum mujhe jante nahi ho," and then Ajay Devgn says, "Tum mujhe jante nahi ho," and you know, this whole obsession with "I love AJ, I'm obsessed with AJ, I want AJ," and you know, AJ is my little nephew, you know, and I thought to myself, I wish I could change his name.
So if there was any doubt in your mind as a viewer whether we are going to endorse this film as a Dekho or a Peko, it has got to be the most emphatic Peko ever, ever, ever. Mayank.
Well, you know, to be fair, Fahad, what did you expect? Firstly, this is a Prabhu Deva film, which means he made Wanted. After that, with Salman Khan. After that, Akshay Kumar wanted to make his Wanted, so he made Rowdy Rathore for him. Then Shahid Kapoor wanted to make his Wanted, and therefore he made R.Rajkumar for him. And therefore now, Ajay Devgn wants his Wanted, and he has made this movie called Action Jackson, which means a lot of stunt scenes, and then Jackson, which means a lot of dance moves. That's really what heroes in Bollywood are supposed to do. And you know these things anyway, but nothing on planet Earth could have still prepared you for a movie called AJ. I don't know whether we're supposed to endorse it in terms of watching it on TV, or are we doing some endorsing watching on DVD, theater. I think I dare you to watch it anywhere and let us know what you feel.
If you think this is a remake and a remake of Wanted, please take it from us, it's unwanted.
Well, as it turns out, everyone did a quick exodus from Action Jackson. Was that also the case with Exodus Gods and Kings? Let's find out.
Director Ridley Scott retells an epic Old Testament tale in Exodus, Gods and Kings, the story of one man's daring courage to take on the might of an empire. Using state-of-the-art visual effects and IMAX 3D, Scott brings new life to the story of the defiant leader Moses, essayed by Christian Bale, as he rises up against the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses, played by Joel Edgerton, setting 600,000 slaves on a monumental journey of escape from Egypt and its terrifying cycle of 10 deadly plagues.
You know, frankly, Fahad, while I was watching this film, and of course it's a very long film, I realized that as times have changed and technology also changes, I think the stories that we love remain the same. Now, this is an old biblical story that I'm sure would be told back in the day in the form of books or perhaps verbally. About few centuries ago, it would be in theater. About a century ago, it would have come to cinema. Right now, it's come to IMAX with 3D. But at the end of the day, the resonance will have to be the same. The characters will have to be the same. This is Ridley Scott working on perhaps one of the oldest stories ever told. He does a fair job of it, but how much can you reinterpret something that's been told again and again? And you know, I was just looking at some of those modern reinterpretations. The first one, of course, is the fact that you see some of the characters, you know, being tinkered with just a little bit. So, for instance, when Moses is talking to God, it turns out it could be that it's hallucination rather than God himself. But then there are other things which go on the side of ludicrous or ridiculous. If you're not an American or a Brit, is when you hear these accents play out. You know, when you hear this, you know, mix and match of American and Brit accent, you know, in a film. Set, in a time far, far away. And the other one, of course, is when we stepped out. And remember, we were speaking to a lady who was watching the film with us, and she kept saying she kept seeing Fab India clothes all across her. But these are liberties that Western filmmakers have always taken. No knock on that. I think my problem with the film was, I wasn't getting engaged with the story itself.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that because I found there was great economy with which, even though it's a 2.5 hour long film, you know, Ridley Scott just takes you straight into Moses as a general in the Pharaoh's army. You know, he's the favored son of, even though he's technically not the Pharaoh's son. And then it just sort of takes you from there. And for Moses to find out that he is indeed, you know, Hebrew and not Egyptian, the revelation, and then, you know, so it's really a very, very, I thought, tightly paced in that sense. Obviously, the main thing, the big controversy in this film, apart from the casting, is the fact that God is depicted as a 10-year-old boy with a Pakka British accent. So it's kind of really interesting, and I'm sure it's going to be so divisive. But I really enjoyed that casting because I think that that kind of vengeful God with a certain amount of immaturity, without compassion, is an Old Testament thing. And, you know, our notions of God as a benign, benevolent creature, a creator, are turned on its head with this. So to have an impulsive 10-year-old boy playing God is a very clever thing. I would have loved to see a 10-year-old girl as God.
Well, from discussing God, we get on straight to discussing the oh my God moments from this film. For me, you know, it's very easy to tell exactly what those moments were. And those were really the moments of destruction in this film, Fahad. I think the way, you know, they envelop your senses purely because of the size of the screen. You know, the maggots, the frogs, the flies, you know, the crocodile, the pool of blood.
Yes.
I think you just feel repulsed by what you see on the screen. And perhaps that is really how it must have been imagined, or perhaps it must have been written. But beyond those technical wizardries, as it turns out, in terms of creating another world, I wasn't taken in by the scale per se, purely because I guess I wasn't getting drawn into the story itself.
Well, I think you also reached late, as you seem to be doing this week, because there was a fantastic battle scene that I know you missed, and I really wish at some point you will see it. Beautifully mounted, and I think, you know, it gives you that sort of edginess which he brought to Gladiator. You know, so in terms of having these biblical epics, but doing it the way that Ben-Hur had that famous chariot race, I mean, you know, that kind of really cutting edge, using technology, using camera techniques, just being able to do that is really the work of a master craftsman. And I think Ridley Scott is certainly that. Without further ado, let's get on to our verdict of Exodus, Gods and Kings.
Well, I think the big paradox so far as this film is concerned is, where do you recommend people to watch it? It has to be watched in IMAX because it's really been made for that format. It's huge, it's technically brilliant. I think the story being told is being told only because there is a master director at work, but the story itself is rather boring so far as I'm concerned. So therefore, you should watch it on TV. So, you know, it's a tough call so far as recommending this movie is concerned. There's no doubt about it. It's a good film. It cannot be dismissed. But I think I'll still go with TV.
Well, there's absolutely no confusion in my mind. This film must be watched on the big screen, IMAX, 3D. This is pure spectacle, and I think Ridley Scott is the true successor to Cecil B. DeMille and the Ten Commandments. Last week, neither Mayank nor I was rather enthused by Ungli, but let's find out what the Desi Martini audience has to say.
With over 500 ratings, the movie has scored a 2.7 on Desi Martini. Desi Martini's verdict says, "The noble Ungli gang will bore you with its cheesy dialogues and snail-like story." One of the reviewers says, "To sum it up, Ungli is nothing worth talking about. A just about okay film that is so easily avoided in a time when there are so many good English films releasing. Alas, the bad run of Hindi films continues, as I wait for PK to hopefully wow me."
Well, right now we're opening a new segment in Friday Double Bill, and that's got to do with films that one of us has watched. And I'm glad that the first film that we're talking about is Bhopal, A Prayer for Rains, purely because this is the 30th year of Bhopal Gas Tragedy, and I think it's a very important film from that respect. Anyway, Fahad, I don't know if you got to see in the 15th year of the tragedy, a film made by Mahesh Mathai, which was Bhopal Express. And that got a lot of attention in the West purely because David Lynch decided to present that film. Well, this is a singular subject that will always be a thorn up the West Backside purely because here was a tragedy that took place. If it had happened in the first world, the response would have been totally different. So the value of human life is treated very differently. And because of the 30th year, a lot of things have happened around it. You know, there have been art installations. Samar Jodha did an excellent one that I saw certain pictures of. And, you know, obviously journalism took it up in a big way, whether it's newspapers or news, or news channels. But I think as a response, it's the feature film that is going to be watched by more people, and it's been made in a very entertaining sort of way also, in a very Slumdog kind of format. I'm glad that's the route that they've taken, and I thought it is an important film, but an equally interesting film too.
Well, it's interesting because Martin Sheen, of course, essays the role of the chairman of Union Carbide, who was never brought to book. And, of course, he passed away very recently, just before the 30th anniversary. So how did that pan out?
You know, I think what Martin Sheen does to this film is what no actor is capable of. Of course, I spoke about how there's Western interest, so that explains Kal Penn in the movie. Which person would cast Kal Penn for a Bhopali, I don't know. And, you know, he flops in that job. There's Misha Barton also, you know, does a very small role. So all these people want to be a part of a film that is a very important memento in that sense. But I think the person who lends it the credibility is Martin Sheen. You know, he humanizes that character who, to a lot of people in India and the rest of the world, though he's no more, was a demon for something that he was responsible for, even though not directly, but he's aware of the hazards possible. I think in the same way, this film humanizes the problem itself. And that, I think, is the reason, Fahad, that I would want people to watch it. Well, that's for Bhopal. How did This Is Where I Leave You go, Fahad?
Well, I'll tell you. Directed by Sean Levi, This Is Where I Leave You is based on the best-selling novel by Jonathan Tropper. Jason Bateman plays Judd Altman, a successful Manhattan-based radio producer who arrives home one afternoon and finds his wife in bed with his boss. Then, Judd gets even graver news. His father has died. He rushes to his suburban homestead where his mother, played by Jane Fonda, awaits her 4 children with a firm diktat. They will honor their father's dying wish to follow Jewish ritual and sit Shiva, grieving together with guests for 7 days. This leads to conflict between the siblings, especially Wendy, Judd's dominating sister, played by Tina Fey, and his other brothers, Paul, the mature one who stayed home to run the family business, and Philip, the immature brother who can't get settled in life. What mayhem transpires within those 7 days is at the core of this dramatic comedy. You know, Mayank, I'm not really perturbed that you haven't watched this film because you've already watched this film several times before. It's almost a genre unto itself, the family reunion film where they all gather.
Is it a dysfunctional family?
Oh, completely dysfunctional. Everybody is cheating. Everybody is cheating on each other. Everybody is got demons from their past. They've come for their father's funeral. They've got to deal with all those various problems. Jane Fonda puts in a mercurial performance as this oversexed psychologist, child psychologist, who's written a book based on her 4 children's lives, and obviously she's exposed all their you know, things from the past, so therefore they are scarred even further. The comedy bits are few and far between. The dramatic moments unfortunately fall flat on their faces, and really at this point, if people are going to be making these kind of films, like I said, which is already a genre unto itself, then it really has to be either great writing or great set pieces. You've got fantastic actors, Jason Bateman, Tina Fey, Jane Fonda, ensemble cast, and what material do they have? Absolute crap. So really, like I said, you were better off with Bhopal.
Well, talking of great writing and great set pieces, Fahad, I think the film to really look out for is this little indie gem called Sulemani Keeda. Well, there's a reason why we're not fully reviewing this film, because some of my closest friends are involved in the making of it, so it'd be so unfair that I wouldn't even believe my own review of the movie. But a few things need to be said. One, that it's a Warsaw indie, which is an oxymoron by itself. So it's made within the film industry, the mainstream film industry, which is situated in Warsaw, an area in Bombay. But it's an independently funded, independently produced film. Second, that, again, we're looking at genre here. It's called mumblecore. Mumblecore is where your lead actors are for real, but all the parts, around them, especially set in outdoor locations, are real people who are reacting to what's going on to these actors. I think MTV makes a lot of those films in the US. A great example of that would be a film like Borat, for instance. The other thing thing is that it's a slacker film, which is really a film about slackers. And these are slackers in Warsaw, which means they work in Bollywood. These are writers, yes, but they don't take themselves too seriously. And I think the best way to chronicle the movie industry or Bollywood, as it's called, is to take a camera and put it with a struggler and then just come back with the best stories ever. I think Sulemani Keeda is that film, and you must watch it if it's playing at a theater near you. Well, that's it, guys. That was Friday Double Bill for you. Tell us what you thought of the movies. Tell us what you think of the show.